questions. Question orale, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
For 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, the government was aware that an agent from Beijing had organized to threaten the family of a member of Canada's Parliament because of a vote in the House of Commons. The government knew this, but they maintained the accreditation for those people, and they allowed them to continue to threaten the family of the member and other Canadians of Chinese origin. Why did the Prime Minister not act? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that's simply false, and it's irresponsible to suggest that our government would have sat on information like that. According to the information that I received following yesterday's story, I know that measures were taken to protect members of this House when they are on the radar of foreign actors through the legitimate work that they do in this House. And our security agencies will continue to do this important work in an independent manner, and I entered into contact with the member for Wellington Halton Hills to reassure him on this subject. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition
reached out to reassure him on the subject. That might have been something to do 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, in July of 2021, the government had a CSIS document showing that an agent for the dictatorship in Beijing was arranging to sanction and punish the family of a Canadian MP because of how he voted on the floor of the House of Commons. And yet for 2 years, this Prime Minister's government kept that agent accredited with diplomatic immunity, allowing him to abuse countless other Canadians of Chinese origin. How can we believe anything he says about protecting our national interests?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That's simply not true. It's actually irresponsible to suggest that any government might sit on a matter of such seriousness. Based on briefings that I received following yesterday's story, I know that steps have been taken to protect members when they could be in the spotlight of foreign actors because of the legitimate work they do in this place. And our security agencies will continue to independently do this important work, and I have indeed followed up directly with the member for Halton Hills to reassure him on this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
You can forgive the member for Halton Welland for not feeling reassured. Nobody should feel reassured. The Prime Minister says my question was false. What was false in it? We know there was a July 2021 document 2 years ago showing that an agent for the dictatorship in Beijing was threatening the family of a Canadian MP because he had stood up for human rights on the floor of this House of Commons. Now, normally that would be a criminal offense for anyone to do, but this individual has immunity granted by this government. Has the Prime Minister taken away that immunity and kicked the diplomat out of Canada? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think outside of this House, where there is extraordinary partisanship and sometimes personal attacks, I think most Canadians understand that no government of any stripe would see a direct threat on a member of this Parliament and their family and sit on it and not ensure anything was acted. That's simply unworthy of anyone sitting in this House to make those kinds of accusations. I can assure the members opposite that we continue to take any threats seriously.
Absolutely.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I have to confess, before 48 hours ago, I would have agreed that no government would ever sit on threats of this nature over 2 years long. But unfortunately, what we've learned is that is exactly what this Prime Minister did. Right. The government knew in July of 2021 that an agent acting for the dictatorship in Beijing, accredited to work at the consulate in Toronto, was threatening a family member of a Canadian parliamentarian, and the Prime Minister's government knew about it and did absolutely nothing. Why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that is simply not true. I spoke with a member for Wellington Halton Hills earlier today, ensured that he got a briefing from our top security officials to ensure that he gets all the information he needs. A core part of CSIS's mandate is to provide briefings and take action whenever a threat exists, and those same top security officials have confirmed that whenever there is action to take, they do so.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And yet he did absolutely nothing other than to hold a meeting with the MP after the information became public. He wasn't interested in protecting Canadians. He was interested in protecting his political reputation, Mr. Speaker. He has the power to kick this diplomat out. Think of it. If a Canadian had threatened an MP or his family over a vote in the House, that Canadian would be in jail. This individual can't be arrested because of diplomatic immunity granted by this government, something the Prime Minister could take away anytime he wants. Why is he keeping this agent in our country threatening our people?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, what the member opposite is proposing is actually not the truth. We are actually continuing to work with our security agencies and ensuring that whenever threats are arisen against Canadians, those security agencies take action, offer briefings, offer support, offer information as necessary and as appropriate every step of the way. That's what our security agencies do to keep Canadians safe, and to suggest that anyone in this House would see a threat to a colleague and simply sit on it is unworthy of parliamentarians.
The Honourable Member for Belly-Chambly. Well, I have to admit, Mr. Speaker, that I don't see what is not true in the questions asked by the Leader of the Official Opposition. So I support the questions that has been asked here today so far. So I have a question for the Prime Minister of a country that is looked down on so much by China that they see us as an easy target. If, Mr. Speaker, the administrator of the Trudeau Foundation were to be found to be in error by anyone, would the Prime Minister recuse himself from any element of intervention?
Très honorable.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I can reassure the Leader of the Bloc Québécois that here in Canada we have strong institutions which ensure that political interference in our politics or our legal process is not allowed, and legal processes will go forward as necessary.
Honourable député.
The Honourable Member for Belly-Chambly. Well, I'll start again, Mr. Speaker. If one of these legal authorities, whether that be the committee, whether that be the CRA, or anyone else, questioned the possible irregularities committed by the brother of the Prime Minister, would he consider that he should not make decisions concerning a public independent inquiry on Chinese interference?
Honourable.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, despite the efforts that have been underway for a number of weeks now from the Leader of the Bloc Québécois, there's one fact that hasn't changed over the last few weeks or even since 10 years, which is that I have no direct or indirect involvement with the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation.
The Honourable Member, l'Honourable député de Burnaby South.
The Beijing government targeted a member of this House, and targeted not only the member, but the member's family. The Prime Minister knew about this and did nothing. Frankly, I'm disappointed. This goes beyond partisan politics. This is about the ability for people in this House to be able to vote their conscience. Why did the Prime Minister inform the member that his family was being threatened? And what will the Prime Minister commit to doing to make sure this never happens again?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it would be outrageous for anyone in this House to see a direct threat at an individual or their family sitting in this House and do nothing. And that did not happen, Mr. Speaker. I would be absolutely unequivocal about that, and that is why we were pleased to be able to offer a full briefing to the member for Wellington Halton Hills so he could ask questions of the top intelligence officials and ensure that we will continue as institutions, as a government, as security services to do everything necessary to keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Look, honestly, it's clear that this government doesn't care about the damage caused by our inaction, by foreign interference, and it's clear that the Prime Minister should have known that the family of the member had been threatened. So, what will it take for this Prime Minister to act and call a public inquiry right now? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have acted, and we have since 2015, by creating, when we were head of the G7 in 2018, a mechanism to fight interference with our allies. In 2019, we put in place a committee of national security experts to ensure that our elections were fair and had not been interfered in. We created a parliamentary oversight committee, and we created NCIR as well. We continue to do what's necessary. We now have an expert, an independent expert, who is looking at
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the government has had 24 hours to get some basic facts about the PRC diplomats' targeting of MPs. So here's my question. On September 10th, 2019, the Public Safety Minister issued a directive to CSIS ordering the service to inform the Minister of any matter or action of interest to the Minister. When was the Public Safety Minister or his office first made aware that a PRC diplomat, Mr. Wei Zhou, was targeting me or my family?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, since this is the first occasion in which the member for Wellington Halton Hills has raised since this matter was brought to the attention of the public and this chamber, I want to express solidarity to him and to his family, and that we will continue to work with him and all parliamentarians to make sure that he and all parliamentarians get the support that they need. Mr. Speaker, since the outset, when we took the reins of government, we have been vigilant in fighting against foreign interference. We have put in place the people, the resources, the tools, and the oversight, as the Prime Minister just said, to defend our institutions. We will do that work together.
Before we go to the next question, I want to remind honourable members that calling each other names is not parliamentary language. The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the directive of September 10th, 2019 is clear. It directs the service, it says that the service has a duty to inform the Minister of any such matter as is relevant to enable the Minister to fulfill the Minister's accountabilities as outlined in the CSIS Act. In general terms, the Minister expects to be consulted or informed regarding any action on which a deputy head would normally involve his or her minister. So my question again is very simple. When did the Public Safety Minister or his office first become aware that a PRC diplomat was targeting a member of this House and their family?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague across the aisle for highlighting the directives that this government has put in place to ensure transparency and accountability around decisions which are taken independently by our nonpartisan professional public servants when it comes to which classified information is made public and which must remain classified to protect people that work in that space. Mr. Speaker, this is not a partisan issue. We must all work together to defend the institutions, the communities, and most importantly, the parliamentarians who serve those institutions to protect our democracy.
Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, what a gutless response. What if that happened to that minister's family? I have the same question. When did he know?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've just said, it is our nonpartisan, independent public servants who make decisions around operations, including which classified information is made public, and for good reason. It is important that we protect the people that work in those institutions, not only to protect our national security, but to protect the people that work within these institutions, including parliamentarians. And Mr. Speaker, let me just say, it is outrageous to make the claim that any member of Parliament would stand for any attack on any parliamentarian. We are united against fighting against foreign interference.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
When did he know?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague can continue to ask the same question. She will get the same answer. But it is this government, Mr. Speaker, that has raised the bar on transparency when it comes to protecting our institutions by creating a committee of parliamentarians, by creating NCIRA. By the way, Mr. Speaker, I would point out the Conservatives had nearly 10 years to create those institutions. They never did. So rather than suggesting that we stand up, I suggest they now stand up and get behind the cause of the government so we can protect all parliamentarians and our institutions.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, on September 10, 2021, CSIS got a directive to inform the Minister of Public Safety of any fact regarding foreign interference. Mr. Speaker, I'll ask a simple question to the Minister of Public Safety. When did he know that a member of this House had been threatened by a Beijing diplomat? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, with respect, the same question, the same answer. The government increased the level of transparency with the creation of a committee of parliamentarians to study issues that affect national security, with the creation of NCIRA, and we will continue to collaborate with all members to protect our institutions and, more important than that, all the members who work in this institution to protect democracy. That's the most important. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. When did the Minister know? The Honourable Minister. Same question, same answer. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, things are going well today, no? The Liberals will lecture anyone who questions them about foreign interference, about democratic values. But let's talk about democratic values. The Prime Minister was warned by CSIS that China was threatening an MP and his family. Any Democrat, any person in a democratic institution would have let that member know, whether they be Conservative, Liberal, Bloc, or NDP, but the Prime Minister chose to keep it secret. Mr. Speaker, by prioritizing secrecy over the safety of a family, he crossed a line. When will there be an independent public inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, with respect, that's scandalous for the Bloc Québécois to suggest that this government would have been inactive faced with an issue like this that was affecting a member and his family. That's why the government created tools to fight foreign interference, to make sure that we keep everyone who works in our institutions safe, and we will remain vigilant. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, CSIS had warned that Beijing sees Canada as a high-priority target for interference. And obviously, because it's easy for China. China was able to get close to the Prime Minister through the Trudeau Foundation. China was able to get close to the Liberals at their own fundraiser cocktails at $1,500 a glass during their first mandate. And when China got caught by CSIS threatening a member's family, the Liberals kept it secret. Do the Liberals realize that it's their fault that China sees interference in Canada as easy as taking candy from a baby? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I had already explained, this government has been very proactive in meeting the challenge of foreign interference. That's why we gave more powers to CSIS. That's why we introduced Bill C-76 to fight foreign contributions which could threaten our institutions. And we will continue to do this important work to protect our institutions, to protect Canadians, and to protect all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, why are we talking about this still today? Well, it's because the Liberals prefer a culture of secrecy over shining light on this situation. It's in their culture to keep this secret, and that's why foreign interference is growing. China's work with the Trudeau Foundation, secret. China's interference in Canada, secret. Threats against the family of an MP, secret. From the beginning, the Prime Minister could have shed light on this with a public independent inquiry. Is he going to continue to sink under the weight of his secrets and drag down the Liberal Party with him? The Honourable Minister of Interparliamentary Affairs. Mr. Speaker, my colleague knows very well that our government, from the very beginning, has taken the questions of threats and foreign interference very seriously. We've introduced a number of measures, and starting in the beginning months of our mandate, and we have strengthened over the following months and years those efforts. And the good news is that the Right Honourable David Johnston is working right now. He will make independent recommendations. He knows the facts, and the government will act to strengthen the measures.
Member for Calgary, Forest Lawn.
To the gutless minister, when did he find out?
I just want to remind the honourable members that unparliamentary language is not welcome in the chamber. Calling people names is not permitted. It's not the first time. It's not the second time. I just want to remind the honourable member the next time I'm going to have to take this question away from him. The honourable member for Calgary and Forest Lawn. When did the minister find out that a member of this House was threatened by a foreign diplomat from Beijing? When? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives continue to pose the same question. They're going to get the same answer. But at the very core of the premise of those questions is the suggestion that somehow this government doesn't care about the Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills. Nothing could be further from the truth. We may have disagreements in this chamber about domestic and foreign policy, but we will always stand united behind every member's right to do their job, to represent their constituencies, because that is the fundamental value of standing up for democracy, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary, Forest Lawn.
For the 8th time, when did the minister find out? When?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, since we continue to get the same question in a broken record format, let me highlight exactly what it is that we are doing to combat foreign interference. We introduced Bill C-59 to give CSIS additional threat reduction measure powers. We introduced Bill C-76 to crack down on foreign funding. We introduced the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians so we could work across partisan lines. And we finally introduced, Mr. Speaker, NSIRA to ensure transparency on how we do this work to Canadians. What's the distinction, Mr. Speaker? We did those things the Conservatives opposed.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the answer is unfortunately not reflective of the question that we are asking. So we'll ask a simple question once again. When did Cabinet and the Minister know that a member of this House of Commons had been the victim of threats from Beijing? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I've already explained many times now, decisions affecting what information is shared publicly or not is made by our public servants who work in an independent, nonpartisan way. And yes, I will work with the member for Wellington Halton Hills with a briefing to make sure that he gets the information he needs and to reassure him that the government is there to protect not only him, but everyone who works in this House.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. The question is very simple and requires a clear answer. When did the government find out that the communist regime in Beijing was threatening House of Commons elected officials? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think that at this point, my honourable colleague understands the answer. I hope that he and all of his colleagues will change their opinion about national security issues and support this government's initiatives. We have created new authorities. We have worked toward increasing transparency. We are working to protect all democratic institutions and all those who work at those institutions.
Center.
Mr. Speaker, the ongoing genocide of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, trans women, gender non-conforming, and two-spirit people is a Canada-wide emergency. Relatives of lost loved ones, human rights advocates, and survivors are calling on this government to take action to end this unrelenting violence. We are not disposable. Our lives are precious, and we deserve justice. Mr. Speaker, will the Liberals recognize this ongoing genocide as a Canada-wide emergency?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. Yesterday, I was in Val-d'Or to underline a $60 million investment in the Friendship Centre in Val-d'Or, which will allow people to use Val-d'Or as a regional hub and to get the culturally sensitive and appropriate care they need. That will save lives. That will address the issues of missing murdered Indigenous women and girls. This is a tragedy, but doing public policy by tragedy only leads to tragic results. I only can direct people to the final report on missing murdered Indigenous women and girls to see the systematic work that needs to be done by our government, by the federal, by the provincial government, and the municipal governments to make sure.
The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
Canada needs to get its critical mineral supply chain off the ground, but now Doug Ford has thrown a major spike in this by doing away with the duty for mining companies to come up with the funds for environmental cleaner. There isn't a First Nation anywhere that's going to allow mining without the guarantees for closure. And Doug Ford is now driving his bulldozer all over the duty to consult, and the result is Treaty 9 has launched a $95 billion lawsuit against Doug Ford and this government. So to the minister, what steps will he take to ensure that sustainability and the duty to consult remains at the heart of our critical mineral strategy?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague for that excellent question. The way in which we can get good projects built, including critical minerals projects, which are essential for the energy transition and offer an enormous opportunity, economic opportunity for this country, is to ensure we do things the right way, respecting the rights of Indigenous communities, ensuring that we are consulting thoroughly, working with Indigenous communities as partners in these projects, and ensuring that we are doing thorough environmental assessments. That's how you move projects forward. That's very different from the gutting of the environmental assessment process that happened under Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. We are committed to doing that going forward.
Honourable Member for St. John's East.
The Government of Canada believes in the collective bargaining process and that the best deals are the ones that are reached at the table. Public servants work hard to deliver important services to Canadians. Can the President of the Treasury Board update the House on negotiations with the Public Service Alliance of Canada?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the MP from St. John East for her question and her tireless work for her constituents. After many weeks of hard work, negotiation, and compromise, the government reached tentative agreements with the PSAC for the core public administration. We appreciate Canadians' patience and understand over that time because the best deals are reached at the bargaining table. We are deeply grateful for public servants who work hard to serve Canadians. These deals are fair, competitive, and reasonable, and bring stability to public servants and Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The minister is right that it would be outrageous for a government minister to know that a foreign agent was granted credentials by this government to carry out threats against an MP's family because of a vote held in this House of Commons. That would be outrageous. The only way we can know if it actually happened is if the minister tells us when he saw this briefing note or any related information showing that the MP's family was threatened. So I ask again, when did he learn?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, now there have been a number of questions on this issue, and I agree with the Conservative colleague in a moment of some consensus that decisions regarding national security and intelligence should not be politicized. And I would certainly hope that that is not what the Conservative leader is now suggesting. And yet it was him, Mr. Speaker, who said a little more than a month ago that when he was the minister responsible for democratic institutions, that he knew about these things and he didn't act because he didn't think that it was in his interest to do so. So let's now unite behind. He's got an opportunity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we do have to put the partisanship aside. It would have been a nonpartisan act. It would have been a nonpartisan act for this government to protect the MP's family, even though he was from another party. It would have been a nonpartisan act to strip away the diplomatic immunity and kick this foreign agent out of our country. But yet, this government didn't do that. So now we need to know the fact. The briefing note was produced in July of 2021 showing these threats occurred. When? When did this minister find out?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm somewhat encouraged. At least the Conservative leader is now using the right words for a change, in that he's saying it's nonpartisan, which is what the government has been saying now for months on this issue. And what I have said to the Conservative leader, what I have said to the member for Wellington and Halton Hills, is that we will work with them to get them the information on this issue. CSIS has offered a briefing to the member for Wellington Halton Hills, and that the Conservatives now, finally, hopefully after some reflection, will agree to work with the government to protect our institutions and the people that work in this chamber.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Si un gouvernement savait.
If the government knew that the family of a member of parliament was threatened by a foreign agent, and that the government did nothing to expel that foreign agent, that would be outrageous. The briefing note was produced in July 2021, reporting that this occurred. Here's what we need to know. When did the minister find out that these threats were aimed at a member of parliament and his family? When? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it is completely outrageous that the Conservative leader is suggesting that the government has no consideration for the member of Wellington Halton Hills. That's why I was in touch with him a few days ago to offer him support and to offer him a briefing with officials who work at CSIS. The government is committed to working with all members in this House in order to protect our democratic institutions and all those who work at them. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This is a question of the gravest importance. There's a member of Parliament in this House whose family has been threatened because of the way he voted here. How can we defend national security on the floor of this House of Commons if our family members are threatened based on the votes that we cast? We need to know whether the government is protecting us against that, or we can't do our work. So I ask one last time, when did that minister know that these threats were directed at this MP's family? When?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said now on numerous occasions, that decisions regarding what information is released into the public domain that touch on security and intelligence are made by our independent and nonpartisan public servants, and we have reached out to the member for Wellington Halton Hills. The government's commitment is to work with him and all members of this chamber so that we can do the work of protecting our institutions, our communities, and most importantly, the people that represent the 338 ridings in this chamber. We will do that work in a nonpartisan way.
L'Honorable.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Heritage Minister told us that the monarchy is not a priority for the government. Well, well, it's so not a priority that the Liberals put the recognition of King Charles III in the budget. The budget. It's so not a priority, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister will leave his own party's convention to attend the coronation of the King of Canada. his king. He could have sent a minister in his place, he could have sent someone else, but bowing down to the king is his priority. Sometimes I think it's a disgrace. Isn't it about time that we got rid of the monarchy, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Canadian Heritage Minister. You know, the Bloc MPs are really something, Mr. Speaker. They wake up in the morning, Mr. Speaker, they brush their teeth, and they get thinking about the monarchy. They are obsessed. Look at the newspaper. They're just looking for fights and squabbles. They're not reading in the paper about climate change. They're not following the work in this House about the investments we make, how we support businesses. No, Mr. Speaker, they want to talk about our monarchy. While they focus on the monarchy, though, we will focus on the priorities of Canadians. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Democracy? I don't know. If you could read my mind, Mr. Speaker. Here's what I'm thinking. The Prime Minister of New Zealand wants his country to become a republic. Australia's ambassador to London says the same. England is going to end up scrapping the monarchy and getting rid of the king before we do. Yet, the majority of Canadians want to cut ties with the Crown. But in this House, apart from the Bloc, all parties are monarchists. That's the impression we get, Mr. Speaker. Does this government really think it knows better than the people of Quebec, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia? The Honourable Canadian Heritage Minister. You know, Mr. Speaker, it might be because other members in this House want to talk about the economy, social programs, issues we might disagree about how to invest in Canada, how to attract businesses, how to help seniors, how to help families, how to help young people, Mr. Speaker. Meanwhile, the Bloc members wake up in the morning and start dreaming about constitutional issues, but we care about the priorities that Canadians and Quebecers have.
Country.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals teamed up with the BC NDP on drug decriminalization policies. Now parents are more afraid than ever to take kids to playgrounds and parks due to open drug use. Law enforcement are now handcuffed and can only stand by and watch. Because of...
Well, if I can just interrupt for a moment, the honourable member, I'm trying to cut her off. I know she's into her question. I'm going to have to ask her to repeat the question. I just wasn't able to hear it because of all the ruckus. The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country from the top, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals teamed up with the BC NDP on drug decriminalization policies. Now parents are more afraid than ever to take their kids to playgrounds and...
I'm not sure how often they want to hear it repeated, but we'll start it again from the top. I want to remind the order. The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals teamed up with the BC NDP on drug decriminalization policies. Now parents are more afraid than ever to take their kids to playgrounds and parks due to open drug use. Law enforcement are now handcuffed and can only stand by and watch. Because of these new drug policies, the Kelowna mayor says police can't stop drug users from getting high and leaving syringes in children's playgrounds. Our Prime Minister is out of touch and our streets are out of control. When are the Liberals going to take public safety seriously?
The Honourable Minister for Public Health.
The toxic drug and overdose crisis continues to take a tragic toll on the families, loved ones, and communities. Our government will use every tool at our disposal to work with our partners to end this national public health tragedy. Since 2017, we've committed more than $1 billion to address the overdose crisis, and we are taking concrete steps to divert people who use drugs away from the criminal justice system. Approving BC's decriminalization proposal for personal possession is an important step. So far, we have supported 31 projects providing a safer supply.
Honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is unbelievable that the Liberals think it's acceptable for open drug use where children play. Right. The answer from this minister is completely out of touch with reality, and the reality is that the drug policies from the Liberal NDP coalition are making our streets and parks less safe for families. And now, municipalities across British Columbia, from Kelowna to Campbell River, are having to take action through bylaws and provincial advocacy just to keep their communities safe. So again, I'll ask, when will the Liberals take public safety seriously?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are committed to ending the toxic drug and overdose crisis. In moving forward on decriminalization, there is adequate supervision by the BC government and the BC Centre for Substance Use on both public safety and public health with proper indicators. We are monitoring this very closely, but we have to stop this toxic drug overdose tragedy, and we will do that.
The
Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Security, yes, him again, confirmed last Thursday before a parliamentary committee that illegal Chinese police stations in Brossard and Montreal had been closed. But the problem with the minister's statement is that it's false. They are still active. In fact, those in charge of these two Chinese police stations claim that they have not received any request from the RCMP to shut the stations down. They say that they're operating business as usual. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are seriously not serious about Chinese interference, which is a serious, serious problem. Can the Prime Minister tell us the truth and confirm that the public security minister in fact misled this House? The Honourable Public Safety Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I explained to my colleague, the RCMP is taking tangible action to deal with the alleged Chinese police stations. The RCMP is awaiting further orders, ready to take action. The RCMP will remain vigilant on this matter. More importantly, $49 million has been earmarked in the 2023 budget. I hope that my colleague and all his Conservative colleagues will support the budget. The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, it is essential that we support scientists and researchers across Canada in order to position ourselves as a global leader in the research ecosystem. Can the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry comment on the recent announcement, regarding the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, and how the fund and investment will support important research initiatives with universities across the country? The Honourable Innovation Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'd like to thank my colleague from Châteauguay-Lacolle for her very important question. And I'd also, most of all, like to thank her for her excellent work. She's a great colleague. I was at Concordia University in Montreal on Friday last week, and we announced a historic investment of $1.4 billion in science, Mr. Speaker. Our students, researchers, and scientists play a vital role in the science ecosystem. I think all colleagues can agree with that. This new funding will support large-scale research initiatives everywhere in Canada, from Vancouver to Calgary, Montreal, and in Halifax too, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, the CMHC is reporting that Canada could see a reduction of almost 32% in new housing construction this year. Their chief economist said with record inflation, sky-high interest rates, and labor shortage, the current economic situation is, quote, inhospitable for new construction. Mr. Speaker, the warnings are coming from inside the castle walls now, so I'm wondering when this government will actually clean up the fiscal mess they've created so Canadians could one day afford a home again.
Great question.
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
I wish the honourable member in good conscience would speak to his colleague from Sarnia-Lambton, who stood in this House and voted against the Housing Accelerator Fund after praising it in committee and praising it in the House of Commons. This is the problem with this party. They have no policies when it comes to actually delivering housing affordability and housing supply for Canadians. His colleague from Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon went further and said that the federal government should withdraw from housing investment and leave everything to the provinces and the market, and somehow it'll be magically okay. Canadians expect better from the official opposition.
The Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Well, I can assure you, when we replace them as the government, we will deliver better. We won't waste taxpayers' money so egregiously and achieve nothing for results. Under these Liberals, local politicians are delaying and even blocking new housing. Saskatoon guarantees a building permit for a house in 5 days. It can be done. There's no reason for the delay. So when will this government finally stand up to local politicians who are creating costly delays so we can get the homes built that Canadians so desperately need?
Right. The Honourable Minister for Housing.
We know that the key to building more housing supply is to work with provinces and municipalities. They don't understand that. And in fact, their leader this morning in this chamber denigrated and attacked 3 of the mayors of Canada's largest cities. That is not going to build 1 unit of housing for the most vulnerable in this country. What we have done is brought real solutions, including the Housing Accelerator Fund, that will double the number of new homes built in Canada. Instead of supporting that and getting serious about this issue, they offer gimmicks and buzzwords, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Tobique-Mactaquac.
Mr. Speaker, I grew up in the small forestry town of Nakawik, New Brunswick, which also happens to be the home of the world's largest axe. At the rate this government is increasing taxes, including a 41-cent per litre hike on Canadians' heating, eating, and meeting, we might need an even bigger axe to slay all these back-breaking taxes. Will this Prime Minister, who is out of touch, take his boot off the backs of hard-working Canadians who are out of money and finally axe this failed, ineffective, and punitive carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable colleague for his question. Work with me, it's going to be a bit difficult to follow. So in 2006, the Conservative Party was against carbon pricing. Then in 2008, they were in favour of carbon pricing. Then in 2009, they were against the fact that they were in favour of carbon pricing. Now that changed again in 2011, Mr. Speaker, and it changed again during the last election campaign where the Conservative Party of Canada campaigned in favour of having carbon pricing. And now they're against it, Mr. Speaker. Give it another year or so, they'll be back in favour of carbon pricing. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Kings Hants.
Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago, 22 people were killed in Nova Scotia in what was the worst mass shooting in Canadian history. The victims were friends, families, and neighbours, and all Nova Scotians were touched by this tragedy. Last week, our government announced funding in partnership with the province of Nova Scotia, dedicated specifically for mental health support for those who were impacted. Can the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions update this House on how that support will support those who have been impacted by this terrible tragedy?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts go out to all the people of Nova Scotia so affected by this tragedy. I want to thank the member for Kings Hants for his question and his work to support all those impacted. Our government is investing an initial $9 million, along with $9 million from the Nova Scotia government, to design and deliver mental health, grief and bereavement services in Cumberland, Colchester, and Hants counties, as recommended in the Mass Casualty Commission's final report. We will also continue to work with community organizations to ensure that the appropriate supports are available for all Nova Scotians.
Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Part of my riding of Nanaimo Ladysmith is on the traditional territories of the Snuneymuxw First Nations. Snuneymuxw entered into a treaty in 1854, yet this agreement has not been upheld. The government has committed to transfer land where the former Nanaimo Indian Hospital stood to Snuneymuxw, but continued to delay, despite being aware of the potential presence of unmarked graves at this site. Shameful. Will the government finally transfer this land to Snuneymuxw so they can move forward as they see fit to ensure justice and healing can begin?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I did have the opportunity a few months ago to sit down with the leadership of Snuneymuxw First Nation to discuss this specific issue. I believe we're quite close on a resolution that would confirm the member opposite's question. So I'm glad to sit down with her, but even more glad to actually conclude this in the right way. It's been a long time coming. Thank you.
Here. The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, the late great Gordon Lightfoot sang, "Lake Huron rolls, Superior sings," in the song The Wreck of the Edmunds Fitzgerald, a tribute to the Great Lakes and its power. Our Great Lakes are a Canadian treasure, but from climate change to toxic waste pollution, these lakes are increasingly under threat. Millions of people in several ecosystems are dependent on the largest concentration of fresh water in the world. Yet, to our embarrassment, this government has not matched the U.S. in respecting our Great Lakes. While many great organizations nations are engaged in their protection, why is this Liberal government still refusing to show leadership on protecting our Great Lakes?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and quite the opposite. The last budget from my friend and colleague, the Minister of Finance, made provisions for record-level investment in the Great Lakes in the history of Canada, Mr. Speaker. We are working with our partners across the Great Lakes on this side of the border as well on the United side of the border. We are in the process of creating, for the first time ever in Canada, an independent Canada Water Agency that will help us address freshwater issues all across the country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for question period today. Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in honor of Gordon Lightfoot.
I now invite honourable members to rise.
Thank you. Merci. I believe the honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.